A federal court has ordered Philip Morris USA, Laura Lard, R.J. Reynolds Tobacco, and Altria to make this statement about the addictiveness of smoking and nicotine.
Begin my questioning on the matter of whether or not nicotine is addictive. I'd like to just go down the row, yes or no. Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
He said his name was Merrill Williams, that he had some documents that I ought to see.
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
Mr. Johnston.
Cigarettes and nicotine clearly do not meet the classic definitions of addiction. There is no intoxication.
We'll take that as a no. Time is short. If you could just, I think each of you believe nicotine is not addictive. We just would like to have this for the record.
The first words I saw were that, in our opinion, or we are in the business of selling nicotine, an addictive drug.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I had just witnessed all the 7 chief executive officers of the tobacco companies raising their right hand and swearing before Congress when asked the question, is nicotine an addictive drug? Each one of them said, in my opinion, nicotine is not an addictive drug. So what I had just 21 days later was absolute evidence that they had known for the last 30 years that nicotine was an addictive drug. They had lied before Congress.
Smoking is highly addictive. Nicotine is the addictive drug in tobacco. Cigarette companies intentionally design cigarettes with enough nicotine to create and sustain addiction. It's not easy to quit. When you smoke, the nicotine actually changes the brain. That's why quitting is so hard.
In 1987, R.J. Reynolds launched a cartoon character, Joe Camel, to revive its tired Camel cigarette brand. But critics felt advertisements like these were encouraging young kids to smoke. Reynolds responded that the ads were designed to convince young adults to switch over from rival brands. Anti-tobacco campaigners were not convinced.
The tobacco industry has been brilliant in hooking kids. It demonstrates what you can do if you have no moral gyroscope whatsoever.
Well, the cigarette commercials were devilishly effective because they conveyed almost no information. They conveyed impressions.
Be happy, go lucky.
But the most important was simply to show desirable people.
It's not a coincidence that after Joe Camel was introduced, the percentage of American kids who smoke Camel cigarettes skyrocketed from less than 0.5% to well over 13%. During that same period of time, the number of adults who use Camel didn't move at all. Joe Camel wasn't one iota about adult brand switching. It was 100% designed to appeal to kids.
The one question my shareholders are going to ask me at the end of the year is, has Camel's market share increased? Because remember, it's just a consumer product competing against Philip Morris and other companies. And we would not be doing our job if we didn't do effective work in our marketing campaigns. It's a consumer product.
This was the first time that the tobacco industry had ever admitted that cigarettes cause cancer, that nicotine was an addictive drug, and yes, they had intentionally marketed to children.
We have to sell cigarettes to your kids. We need 500,000 new smokers a year just to stay in business. So we advertise in your schools, at candy counters. We lower our prices. We have to. It's nothing personal. You understand.
The tobacco industry. How low will they go to make a profit?
It's one of the most addictive substances on earth. And it's hooked millions. It's called nicotine. And the tobacco industry knows that the more nicotine their cigarettes have, the more hooked you'll be. Of course, every year, thousands of people die from their addiction. But you know what they say. There's plenty of fish in the sea. The tobacco industry, they profit, you lose.
Little or no regulation Yet the prime ingredient, nicotine, is a compound that's lethally toxic in anything other than very small doses.
For a long time, there was no warning label on packages of cigarettes, and actually they weren't. They wanted a label on there, and in so doing, they could transfer the accountability, the responsibility for any adverse health effects from the industry to the consumer.
By the year 2025, 500 million people will die of smoking. Now, that's a Vietnam War every day for 27 years. That's the Titanic sinking every 27 minutes for 27 years.
And it's called
Juul. Juul looks more like a flash drive or computer device, but it is really another kind of e-cigarette.
Because devices like Juul might be designed to help smokers get off cigarettes, but they're also addicting a new generation to nicotine.
The tech aspect definitely helps people get introduced to it. And then once they're introduced to it, they're staying because they're conditioned to like all these different products. And then this is another product. And it's just another product until you're addicted to nicotine.
But the majority of them didn't know that it always contains nicotine. It's easy to trace that information gap. You just have to look at the ads. When you look at Juul's marketing today, you find video testimonials from adult ex-smokers. But when Juul first launched, their marketing looked a lot different. When you put those ads alongside old cigarette ads, the similarities are pretty striking. Both marketed relaxation, sharing, travel, freedom. Typical e-cigarettes have between 6 and 30 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter of vape liquid. One Juul pod packs in 59 milligrams. We know that nicotine dependency can prime developing brains for future substance abuse disorders. The company says that Juul's nicotine content is about as much as a pack of cigarettes, though tobacco experts say it's likely more than that.
Citing the fact that they can contain harmful chemicals.
The more times you heat it over and over and over again, that contributes to some of the carcinogens or formaldehydes that we see in e-cigarette aerosols, according to some recent research.
Couple that with tales of exploding batteries, child poisonings, and all kinds of other bad stuff, and you've got to wonder what is going on here. I want to know what it's doing to my lungs. So I'm heading to USC's Health, Emotion, and Addiction Laboratory to talk to some of the top researchers in the field. A lot of people say, you know, hey, this is vaping, it's not smoking.
Right.
What is the difference between vapor and smoke?
You take any kind of mixture of chemicals and you heat it up to a temperature, there's going to be some chemical reactions that are occurring, right? And some of those chemicals are going to be hazardous.
And there is a governmental agency, I believe, that regulates food flavorings and stuff like that.
You can take a chemical that's safe to ingest and swallow. It may not be safe to inhale. I think one of the issues that's been raised is the substance that's been used to create a buttery consistency. So if you get like microwave popcorn, it's caused by this chemical diacetyl. That's safe to eat and swallow. But inhaling, it's a different story. Workers in these plants that were creating these bags of popcorn that have, you know, the diacetyl buttery flavoring, were developing this rare lung disease. Companies are putting diacetyl in their e-juice because you need something to create that viscosity.
I'd like to talk a little bit about what's in these various liquids. We know that nicotine is very toxic if ingested. We've got these little bottles here. They've got, you know, fruity pictures on them. How much of this would it take to kill a kid?
It might only be 1 or 2 milliliters. Now, a sip of your coffee that you take, or even a child's sip, is about 5 milliliters.
So it would just take a sip to kill a kid, and yet we don't really have child-proofing on these. Why is that?
That is one of the frustrating things about these products, because you can buy a lot of things, Tylenol, aspirin, Drano, and those all require packaging that is child resistant.
Right. And when we're getting into these these bigger custom rigs, what's the problem there?
They're lithium-ion batteries. And what's happening is that people are maybe overcharging them, using improper chargers. In addition, they're carrying extra ones in their pocket. And if your phone's in there, if your key's in there, anything that has metal on metal contact can start a fire. So we've seen burns to legs, the groin region, but also these have exploded, for lack of a better word, when people have been having it close to their face. And we've seen bad burns to the face and to the neck region and the upper chest from these batteries exploding.
In April, the FDA demanded that Juul submit documents on its marketing and research. A group of senators sent a letter asking Juul to stop using flavors and designs that appeal to children, and there are now 3 lawsuits alleging that Juul contains too much nicotine. The trouble is, there's still a lot we don't know about the long-term health impacts of e-cigarettes. Juul, like other e-cigarettes, might have set out to design a solution to a public health problem, but in a lot of ways, their product has created a new one.